Hello class, welcome to this wonderful and fascinating lesson I'm going to give you. I have teacher assistant, Ubuntu. Let me give Ubuntu all of the necessary outfit. Yes, you are such a brilliant dog. Yes, so deeply intelligent. I love you, my boy. Isn't he cute? Okay, so let me just cut to the chase. I've been asked a question from a student, which is one which comes up very often just from general people on the street when they hear that I am a memory expert and that I teach people how to do better academically. People in every say,
I wish you'd been around when I was at school because my memory was terrible. I just could never remember a thing. How does memory work?
And so what I'm going to do is explain to everyone very quickly how memory functions, and then I'm going to apply it to a lesson based on work which a student sent me so that you can understand practically how it would work just with a tiny little section of history. So here's the short thing. Human beings ordinarily get data through experience. We sensorially experience things, and what you remember afterwards is the sensory stuff. Now, that really makes sense, because if memory is the getting of data and the retrieval of data, once you've stored it, the getting, storage, retrieval, and if data is obtained through our senses, we see things, smell things, touch things, taste things, that immediately means that the only way that memory can work as a mechanism is in a sensory fashion. Can get a little bit more complicated, but not much. So, let me just give a practical example. When I say that memory is sensory, think of a holiday that you went on recently. Or if you think, excuse me, have you forgotten that we're in a play? There's like lots of travel bans. I haven't been on a holiday since 2019. Fine. The last time you went to the park, the last time you went to the grocery store, if you're lucky enough to live at the beach, the last time that you went to the beach. Immediately, the data from that experience, from that holiday, from that beach, from the shop, floods your mind. And what do we mean by the data? You're immediately thinking, gosh, it was really quite hot when I went to that beach. Oh, wow, the trees were so green in the park, it was amazing, and the dogs were playing so nice, it was really lovely. I hated the shops because they were so crowded, and it smelled bad because I think that someone must have dropped eggs. Whatever your experience was, it's sensory. Whatever happened to you, you are remembering the sensory input which happened for you. So, this being said, memory is sensory. If you've experienced something sensorially, it's much, much easier for you to remember it. And that begs quite a simple question. What if you haven't experienced it sensorially? Because I wasn't around for World War II. I definitely wasn't around when Hitler was born in 1889. So since I haven't experienced it, how can I remember it? And that brings up a concept which I sometimes give that I call sensimulation. Cheesy phrase, but it works well. Sensimulation basically means we often simulate a sensory experience. In incredibly simple terms, we imagine what someone is talking about. So for instance, if I say something to you like, I just went to the beach, and it was really, really nice because the waves were so amazing and the water was clear as crystal and the mountains always look so beautiful above the ocean because I live in this very pretty place with mountains above the ocean, but I am so annoyed because it's summer at the moment and yet the water is really cold. Normally by this time of year the water is actually really nice where I live, but at the moment it's cold. I've now told you the story. What's happened? You've been imagining someone going to water that is very clear with very nice waves with mountains around it and them getting a shock when it was cold. You've imagined it. In other words, you've simulated the data that I've given you. And one of the biggest bits of advice which I give to students when I come and give free talks at their schools is I say, whenever a teacher gives you a lesson, ask a very easy question. Now, it doesn't apply for maths and accounting and certain subjects, more complicated stuff that will serve for that. But for now, when it comes to something like history, geography, biology, ask yourself, am I picturing what the teacher or the textbook is describing? Because if you picture it, it's going to stick in your mind without you even trying. Now, what I've done is this. I took this one sample page that a child gave me, and I decided I'm going to write it out not in horrible academic kind of terms, but as a story, just as a basic thing describing what's going on. Almost like a friend telling me a story like, oh, did you know, like I went to the beach and it was amazing and the mountains were pretty and blah, blah. in the same way, I want you to picture what this is describing. Now, you can't picture everything of the story. You'll notice that some of it is highlighted in purple. Those are the bits that don't make an immediate picture. But most of it does make a picture. And I'm going to go relatively quickly. And don't stress about the bits that you can't remember. That's not a huge issue. What I do want you to do is picture everything that you can. You can even close your eyes to really help that work better. But basically, once upon a time, a baby is born. 1899, and he happened to be Hitler. And he has this nasty ass dad, like, I hate you, Adolf. You know, ich hasse dich, Adolf. Can you imagine? Nasty ass daddy. No wonder he wound up screwed up. Anyway, this kid was really good as an artist. You know, imagine him with crayons and stuff. And he was a really good artist, and he wanted to become an artist. But unfortunately, like, oh, burn, he was rejected by the Vienna Art School. So he applies to this really cool art school and like, go away, you're just not good enough. And he wound up homeless for 5 years. Imagine this kid like wandering the streets, all homeless, surviving, by the way, on art. He would actually paint and draw and sell those to people. That's how he survived. But he was homeless for 5 years until he went to Munich. So he arrives in Munich in 1913. And at that point, this little Austrian boy fell in love with Germany. It's like, I love Deutschland, I love Deutschland. I wear my lederhosen all the time. I bathe in sauerkraut, like Germany all the way. He became a total German fanatic. He just thought Germany was amazing. So much so that he actually wound up fighting in World War I for Germany. He was so brave that they awarded him a medal that's called the Iron Cross, because it's literally a cross kind of made of iron that you can imagine, for being really brave. And then eventually, at the very last year of the war, he was actually wounded by gas, okay, while fighting. So you can picture all of that, that's easy. Then the war ends, Germany has lost. And at that point, mushrooming all over Germany are new political parties. Imagine that, popping up like mushrooms. Loads of people are wanting to create political parties to try to gain traction at this point in Germany, and one of them was called the German Workers' Party. In German, that turned into DAP, okay? So the DAP basically was this party for German workers. It started out small, 50 people. So you can imagine like 2 classrooms at school worth of these German workers, like, oh yeah, Deutschland. And there are a few things about it. They loved the nation. They felt that what you had to do is you had to do anything that would make the nation stronger. All of your actions were to make a nation stronger. They also believed that the nation's wealth and strength and industry belonged to the people. Now those two concepts, the idea that it's all for the nation is called nationalism, and the idea that things ultimately belong to the people of a country is socialism. So they were a nationalist socialist party, nationalist socialist party. And a couple of interesting things about them. They, firstly, were all like, go Germany, Deutschland, we love them. But because of that, they hated what had happened to Germany after World War I. They were looking around a very different Germany. It was no longer a Germany rooted in old traditional conservative stuff. Germany was starting to change, and they wanted more of that conservative German stuff. And so they hated what was called the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic was basically that more modern kind of Germany at that time. And so they hated that, and they really wanted to push against it. They also hated the Treaty of Versailles, which you probably heard about, that fancy treaty signed in France. And they also thought the Jewish people were responsible for everything that got wrong in the country. So that's clearly a little bit daft and really not very nice, but they hated Jewish people. Just imagine, here's this party, they think, go country, we all own the country, it's for everyone. This is the social nationalist kind of stuff. And also this idea that the Weimar Republic was horrible, Treaty of Versailles sucked, and Jewish people are responsible for all the bad stuff. Hitler suddenly enters this, and a few things happen. Firstly, year after the war, so it's literally 1 year, the war ended in 1918. In 1919, he's immediately the second in charge, after the guy who started the party, who was called Anton Drexler. So you can imagine Anton Drexler is now number 1, but Hitler's number 2. The very next year, they already released a 25-point program of the things that they believed in. 25 points, just imagine a page with bullet points. Not the whole page, that would be about 30 points. So they're literally like, here's a page, but only up to there. 25 points saying this is basically what we believe. And Hitler had a huge impact on the party because, as we know, he was a very charismatic speaker and everyone listened to him. The party swelled to 3,000 members, literally within a year or so. So from 50 to 3,000, he was really, really, really potent in doing all of that. And because he was now not just the second in charge, but he was really the schniz within the party, he had the power to make a suggestion. You know, I actually think that we should not be calling it the DAP. We should be calling it the NSDAP, the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party. We could call it Nazis for short. That's where the word comes from, that's where Nazis come from. And they took on the swastika as a logo. So now you can imagine, Hitler's now persuaded them to change names and everyone's walking around with these nasty-ass swastikas. And the next year, predictably, you can imagine he had become so powerful within the party that they made him the leader. July 1921, he was the leader of the party. Now, that makes a picture. I've said it relatively slowly to make sure that you can imagine it, but let's go through it very quickly and make sure that you're just imagining. You can even close your eyes if it's easier. Baby gets born, nasty father, he likes art, but he doesn't get accepted to art school, so he's homeless for 5 years, even though he's got to sell paintings. And he goes to Munich, he falls in love with Germany. After the war, in which he fought and won that cross and got damaged by gas, all these political parties suddenly start, and one of them is the German Workers' Party. He decides this is amazing because he loves their nationalist and their socialist ideas, but they're horrible people in the sense that they think the Treaty of Versailles is horrible, they hate the Weimar Republic, they blame Jewish people for everything. But now that he's joined them, he becomes second in charge very, very quickly, and because he's a brilliant speaker, lots more people join the party, and he then has the power to change the name of the party, and pretty soon they're just called the Nazis, and shortly after that, he's their leader. That's all a natural picture. Some things don't make natural pictures. For instance, the name Anton Drexler. How can you remember that the leader of the party was Anton Drexler? The exact dates, like he became leader in July 1921. That forms a part of another video that I'm going to do. What do you do when information doesn't make a natural sensory experience, or you can't imagine it? But the big advice I have for students and anyone listening is, if you want to remember information that someone tells you or that you read, ensure that you are imagining what it is talking about, because once you've done that, it's in your mind pretty much immediately. About 85 to 90% of the work that you have at school doesn't need effort to remember, provided you're simply imagining what it discusses. There we go, that is video 1, and I hope that that was very helpful. I hope you thoroughly enjoyed the class.
Oh yes, I did. I really enjoyed the class. It's been so illuminating. Now I understand why I don't remember what my husband says. It's because I don't imagine a thing when he goes on and on and on.
Like you've just imagined a weird couple, haven't you? Okay, everyone, lesson 2 to follow.